got a little bit carried away there at the end. Sorry about that, but that is what we're here to learn how to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player, extraordinaire. Scales. That is what we're going to talk about today. How to practice them. A lot of people out there complain that it is boring, but it is kind of step numero uno into becoming a legend of the six strings and soloing like a wild banshee in heat in the Irish countryside. So you got to know them. And the problem that people run into is that, one, it's kind of boring, and two, when you start to try to solo and come up with melodies and things like that, they feel a bit scalular. That you're just playing the scale over and over again. And so I always like to teach a method of practicing these things to use them. So that being said, what we're doing today is I've got a little groove there I looped with a B7 chord. So we are going to be using the Mixolydian mode, the Mixolydian scale. It's a fun scale to learn and to play and to solo over. I find this method particularly useful when practicing the modal scales, because modal scales, the modes, are about harmony. So you can learn the scale up and down the neck and all the positions and all the patterns and everything like that, but if you don't understand the sound of the scale, you're not going to achieve the desire you're going to want. A lot of cats here on the internet teach it, it's like the major scale, but starting on this note. And while that's a good way to kind of start to get that under your hand, it neglects the harmony side of things. So that's kind of the second part of this lesson here, is kind of focusing on harmony. So what we will teach you is a couple of things. We'll teach you how to practice any scale, in this case the Mixolydian scale, if you've kind of just started practicing it. Number two, we're going to teach you some ways to kind of spice up your practice routine and kind of get the sounds of whether it's a modal scale like the Mixolydian scale, or it's your blues scale or your pentatonics or anything like that. Just get those sounds in your ear, so it'll train your ear as well. And then number three is to kind of how to, once you've got the scale under your hand, you kind of understand the sound, is to kind of start playing around with some different ideas. And it'll allow you to come up with ideas in your practice time. So effectively, you will be learning your scales and then also, getting some practical experience using them, rather than just sitting there running up and down the neck in all the positions to a click track, although that is important. Keep playing with a metronome. So we'll zoom in and let's get started. Can you dig it? Oakley dokley, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We're going to talk about scale practice times. We're going to use that Mixolydian scale as I talked about before. Quick rundown on modes if you're not familiar with that, although if you're watching this video and have spent any time searching for guitar content on the internet here on YouTube, you have run across a video on modes. A lot of guitar players get a little bit intimidated by it, but really what it is just a setting, is a good way of conceptualizing it, right? Your cell phone has a blue light setting there. Your blender has a puree mode, right? So it's just a setting, is all it is. And the Mixolydian is a fun kind of groovy setting. It's used a lot in some of that country rock stuff that we love so much, southern rock. I think Allman Brothers Band, Grateful Dead also uses Mixolydian a lot. Seen a lot in jazz as well, although they're kind of coming at things a little bit maybe more academically than we are here. In any case, we've got, just in that backing track was just a nice little B7 groove, so something like, again, we're trying to make this fun as opposed to just sitting there. And that is all that scale is. Sounds eerily similar to the B major scale, but we're taking, instead of using that A sharp, it's actually an A natural. So it's a flatted 7. It's a major scale with a flatted 7th. That's all the Mixolydian mode is. Not rocket science level music theory. And the reason why it sounds so good against a B7 or a dominant 7 chord is because those chords, interestingly enough, have that flat 7 note in there. So that's the kind of the key to making it sound modal. Starting with the level 1, if you've kind of just come across this, maybe you've got a tablature, you've watched a couple of videos, and you're kind of starting to get it under your hand, is to just loop a backing track like I've done and go through that scale. Demonstration. And it's okay, you know, if maybe you don't always have it under your hands and you have to kind of, you know, play out of time or something like that. We're learning, and that backing track, as long as you've looped it properly, will always be there for you to find your center. So yeah, that would be the first way to practice. That is just over any type of backing track. And again, the goal with this, or even if you're doing even if you're not doing a modal scale, right? Let's just say we want to do that over, use our home position, B major scale, right? So based off this, you could do that as well, you know. Whoops. And that will sound great, and you'll get that under your hand, and you'll get that kind of that sound there. So that would be method number 1. It's just going through that scale, and then just real quickly for, you know, you haven't encountered the Mixolydian scale here, because I guess it is kind of different. So for the scale itself, if you're not familiar with that, it's pretty simple. We're just gonna start here at 7 and 9 on the E string, then go 6, 7, 9 on the A string, again 6, 7, 9 on the D string. So all together you've got, and then just below that on the G string it changes a little bit here to back to 6, 8, 9, and then you're going to repeat that same kind of shape there, same fingering, just up a fret on the B string. So that's going to be, what is that, 7, 9, 10, and then there you have root again at the 7th fret of that E string. And you can kind of come over here to that C sharp if you wanted to as well at the 9th fret. So that is the Mixolydian scale there. And again, you know, just practicing that against the backing track up and down will kind of help you get the feeling of that and get the sound. The next thing you'd want to do after you've got the scale under your hands is to start kind of farting around with it. And anytime you're using a modal scale or like the blues scale, you'll want to emphasize the notes that make that scale that scale. So with something like, it's usually a half step, right? So when we're thinking bluesland, it's that little half step there, minor third going to the major third, that makes that blues scale the blues sound. In a similar vein, that those half steps here, you know, leading into that flatted 7th, you know, you really want to emphasize that flat 7 there, because that is the note that makes it that major scale, or that Mixolydian scale. And so you know, the next thing you do during that looping that backing track is kind of finding those little areas to emphasize that, so you can get that sound in your ear. So I'll demonstrate that as well. Like that, just, and that leads me to kind of the back side of that is also, you know, rather than just rehearsing it once you've got it under your hands, instead of just going, you know, up and and down, find little spots there to kind of groove on, because that's where kind of melodic ideas start coming out, and that's where you kind of, again, reinforce that sound of the scale in your ear. That's kind of, I hope, not to keep beating that point home, but that's kind of, it's super important. So what does that sound like? What would be, there were some notes that were not in the Mixolydian scale there, but that is okay. Sometimes, you can also find chromaticism there for later on when you want to get jazzy. But in any case, so yeah, just, I could even go outside into a different pattern of the scale. Practicing those arpeggios against that as well. That would be this, just outlining that. Again, good way to get that Mixolydian sound under your hands. And the third thing you can do once you've got, and again, I would stress, I'm using just one position here just to make this video not super long. You would want to do this ideally in all 5 positions of the scale. But once you've kind of got that under your hands and you're practicing that and you're, messing around with different ideas and different rhythmic variations, you can start mixing your scales, right? And I kind of did that at the intro there, where I kind of, once I got to this root note, I switched from the Mixolydian to blues. You can absolutely do that, and then once you start mixing and matching scales, it gets a lot more fun. So what I'll do here is I'll just kind of go fart around in Mixolydian land, and then we'll switch over to Bluesland for some bluesy nougat. Can you dig it? Alrighty. Something like that. Wavering in between those two things is a good way to just to spice up the fricassee, shall we say. So that would be kind of like level 3, So just to recap, tip of the iceberg, we're just getting the Mixolydian scale, or whatever scale you're practicing. In this, just for ease of teaching, I'm using that scale. And, getting it under our hands, and then doing it against the backing track. And then we're starting to play around with things at level 2. A cool thing to do, it's kind of a bluesier thing to do, but like little call and response things will kind of help, again, give you that sound that you're looking for if you're playing a modal scale. Will also, it's just a cool thing to do, especially, rhythmic things. So like if I'm doing like a blues thing and I go, I can repeat that same kind of rhythmic idea. Just things like that. All sorts of ideas to kind of come out of the woodwork when you play with these things. And that would be another thing I would suggest is, not sticking too much to, one kind of a thing. Just explore different things. And a good way to practice this, here's some final advice here before we wrap it up. I would also suggest, this is just to pick a scale at the beginning of the week, whatever that looks like for you. So let's say for ease of access, or teaching, hello brain, we're doing the Mixolydian. You'll start, like Monday, we'll just do the first position. And then Tuesday we'll come back and do second position, and so on and so forth. That way you don't, take up too much of your time. You got lots of other different responsibilities and things like that, and you get these scales under your hand. So I hope that this makes sense. Wowie zowie. So that is my nifty little practice tool for really any scale. Doesn't have to be the modal scales. I know we focused on the Mixolydian mode there. But, it's really good method to kind of have some type of backing track to kind of get your ears used to the harmony around these things. A lot of people, especially when they're teaching the modes, kind of overlook that kind of a situation there. And I think that's what, kind of intimidates the budding guitarist when they're approaching modes for the first time. And also, sitting there, practicing to a metronome or, practicing unplugged in front of the TV, things like that can get kind of boring. So this is a way to just make your practice more fun. I hope that kind of came across. Thank you so much for watching this video. It really does mean the most. I appreciate your support here as I continue doing YouTube teaching and things like that. There are other ways you can support me, of course. If you want to click any of the links down below, that'll take you to number one way you can support me is listening to the music that I write and compose on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, what have you. There's all sorts of stuff. There's blues and rock stuff, singer-songwriter stuff. There's something for everybody there. So would appreciate it if you would check that out. Would also appreciate it if you give me a follow on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to follow me. I would appreciate that as well. Would also appreciate it if you'd like this video. It does help me get into the algorithms there. Subscribing also helps. And when you do subscribe, clicking that little bell does help because you get notified when videos like this happen. You also get notified when I am live streaming, which I do so frequently here on the YouTube every Tuesday. In fact, at 6 p.m., we do Musical Hangout, which is the live music experience that your friends and family are sure to enjoy. So you won't want to miss that. Every Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, we're just hanging out, playing some of my own tunes, some cover tunes, and it's a good way to interact with me in a live music setting. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate your continued support. I have been Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire, signing off, reminding you that sometimes the sex is so good that even the neighbors have to smoke a cigarette. Bread is bread, cheese is cheese, praise God.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.